The two-day APEC Leaders Meeting began earlier on this Friday in the historic city of Gyeongju. And on Press Perspective today, we touch upon the latest related developments. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, October 31st here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. The APEC Leaders Meeting started earlier this morning and it's set to end tomorrow, that is Saturday, with a joint declaration. Now today we touch upon the prospects of such a declaration as well as a host of other APEC-related stories. For this, I have Celio Fioretti with French daily Le Croix joining me from Arirang's outdoor APEC studio in Gyeongju. Celio, welcome.
Hello, glad to be here.
I also have Yang Chien-Hao, freelance journalist, standing by over at the Media Center in Gyeongju. Chien-Hao, I understand it was a busy day for you today.
Hello, Sunny. Good evening.
Right. Celia, we'll start with you. Let's begin with a few words regarding the atmosphere among members of the media there in Gyeongju covering APEC-related stories.
Well, I could say there's a growing sentiment of frustration among media members here. First of all, they're mostly complaining about the management issue overall with the APEC summit. A lot of people today went late to the media center because of traffic control delaying the buses, even the official APEC shuttle coming to Gyeongju, coming to the International Media Center to host the journalists. Many people have faced 1 hour, 2 hours delay coming here to work, and even in the media center, people are complaining that the access is very restricted. We cannot go to the main building where the conference are being held, and also the access to delegation, to diplomats for interviews is very, very much restricted. So I would say the situation is quite tense now in the newsroom. People are really on nerves and waiting for any sort of communication from officials which are not coming as early as they would like. Reporting seems to be difficult and limited for this APEC event. Colleagues that covered the ASEAN summit last week send us a very different message. They were allowed to meet and walk around, interview a lot of leaders at the ASEAN, and here it seems to be a bit more complicated than last week. So I would say that's why we're seeing here at the International Media Center a growing sentiment of frustration.
Chien-Hao, what more can you add with regard to that reality shared by Celio?
Yeah, it's indeed a very tough experience for me because we really have many difficulties, especially because of the traffic restrictions. We've been stuck in the taxi for like 1 or 2 hours. Even one of my colleagues today, he just get up from the taxi and then forced to walk to the International Media Center directly, which also took him 1 hour. And not to mention, if it's a cameraman trying to carrying his luggage, carrying his camera and those heavy equipments, it will be very, very difficult. And also, this is very difficult for us to find seats to work. So think about it, if you come from the hotel and get a taxi and then it is stuck on the street, and then finally you come here after 1 or 2 hours and then you can't find any seats to work, that is really disappointing and it wastes our time.
I'm sure if these concerns have been raised by the journalists there in Gyeongju, the organizers of this particular event will seek to address those concerns by tomorrow, hopefully, where the last session of the APEC Leaders Meeting takes place. Celio, President Lee Jae-myung, for his part, has held a number of notable bilateral summits on the margins of the APEC Leaders Meeting. What has been the assessment thus far with regard to his diplomatic gains as covered by the foreign media?
Well, for international media, the highlight of this week were, of course, the Xi Jinping and Lee Jae-myung summit, and also earlier that week, the Lee Jae-myung-Donald Trump summit. For the former, with the President of China, Xi Jinping, the discussions were quite formal and diplomatic, so the media were expecting maybe something more concrete on relation, especially regarding the growing anti-China sentiment here in South Korea. That was not that much talk during the summit. Both leaders agreed diplomatically to deepen their relationship and be friendly, whether it's business or political situation. But what attracted the most the attention of international media was the Donald Trump Lee Jae-myung summit. And for that, I think the reactions were quite mixed. There's a lot of debate going on social media by analysts, observers of the APEC summit. The main issue they have is with this deal on nuclear submarine. Donald Trump gave the green light to Korea to build them in Philadelphia in the Philly shipyard. And that can sound like a win for sure for South Korea, which is looking to increase its defense capabilities, especially facing North Korea, which have, with its alliance with Vladimir Putin, has become more of a threat than the years before. But analysts raise the question, is it a good idea to increase the number of nuclear submarines in the world? Will that send a good signal for peace and world stability, especially in Asia Pacific, which is a region which sees a lot of tension with China with China in Taiwan, but also China in the US. So is it a good idea to bring more weapons on the table? And another question that was raised by analysts regarding that deal for the nuclear submarine, the submarine will be built in the US, and they were raising the question, is it a good idea to build nuclear submarine, a new defense system in a foreign country? South Korea has been proud of having a sovereign industry of defense here in South Korea with leaders like Hanwha, for example. And now they will be built in the US. That pose a risk for some analysts of maybe a reliance too much on the US, which has become sort of an unreliable ally since Donald Trump went back into the office last January.
Meanwhile, Celio, earlier this morning, the first session of the main APEC event, the Economic Leaders Meeting, took place, and tomorrow, like I mentioned earlier, is the second and final session. What are the prospects of a Gyeongju declaration, Celio?
It's very different from the question.
Well, on that, Foreign Minister, actually, Choi-yeon last, we gave an interesting interview. That was the question, what will be on the Gyeongju Declaration at the end of the summit? And while APEC is an economic summit that was made and created in the 90s to promote free trade among in the region, Asian Pacific region. Nowadays, with the trade war ongoing with the US and China, the big amount of tariff being deployed on all sort of products, including on ally countries like Japan and Korea. The question is, can free trade still exist in the region in that context? And on that, Foreign Minister Choi-yeon said maybe the free trade part will maybe not be included in the final declaration, but he seeks to maybe push more on other topics such as demographics, peace and stability, and also new technologies such like AI, which is a big discussion here at the APEC summit. People were a bit worried that Trump coming a bit earlier and sort of monopolizing the attention about trade will mask the other big topic that the APEC should cover for this edition. But I think in the end we will see in the final declaration something related to APEC, related to AI, related to demographics and related to peace and stability in this region, which show a lot of tension.
Right. Moving forward then, Chien-Hao, earlier we spoke about the problems that you've been experiencing in Gyeongju with regard to traffic. Keeping that in mind, the New York Times recently took issue with the alleged lack of accommodation in Gyeongju as it hosts this year's APEC gathering. Now, the Foreign Ministry here has disputed this particular claim, of course. What has been your experience there?
So last week on the program, I've mentioned that whether this APEC summit in Gyeongju can be considered a success, it shouldn't be judged only by the summit itself, but also by whether the city's overall infrastructure and the logistical support are adequate. And regarding to the hotel issue that you just mentioned, I don't think that's the main problem, because most of my colleagues and friends, they were able to book the hotels here, though the price are a bit quite high. The biggest problem, however, was the lack of support for journalists, particularly the very poor preparation in the international media center, like I just mentioned in the beginning. For example, there weren't enough workspaces for reporters, and traffic restrictions were frequently imposed around the media center without prior notice. So many of us, we have to end up stuck in the taxis for a long period of time. For example, because of that, I have to give up editing the video of my primetime news broadcast. And also the worst situation was when journalists were trying to get from their hotels to the media center. Because of getting stuck, we can't do anything, and it's just waste of our time. Gyeongju is really a beautiful city, and the people here are so wonderful. Even the local bus drivers are trying to argue with the police, helping us, and They have doing their best to help us, but this APEC meeting has clearly exposed many logistical issues and infrastructure problems that need to be reviewed and improved.
Right, and addressed, of course. Celio, as Chien-Hao is saying, Gyeongju, it's a beautiful city, and some even call it a roofless museum. On a positive note, Celio, what has been your impression there?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely it's you can say it's a museum, a roofless museum, as many historical buildings are in the area, and as you can see also behind me, you get a blend of modernity and also tradition with this beautiful pagoda here at the Haiko Convention Center. I would say the APEC in Gyeongju also showcased some of the most beautiful buildings in the area. The First Lady had an event today at Bulguksa Temple, which is very famous and attracts millions of tourists every year. Walking around the city, you see also how well the city of Gyeongju tried to keep this heritage alive, with a lot of buildings keeping traditional roof. Even I was surprised to see gas station with a traditional tile roof, Korean style tile roof, which is, it's good also to show that it is the ancient capital of the Shilla Kingdom, and in here we can see this tradition, this heritage still living, and I think a lot of also foreign delegation were impressed by that, being in this beautiful environment to enjoy Korea, all its history and its rich culture, and also foreign journalists were quite impressed by that.
Right. Chien-Hao, China, it's poised to host next year's APEC gathering. What are some factors that you believe we should be keeping our eye on?
All right, so next year it will mark the third time that China hosting the APEC summit. The first one was in Shanghai in 2001, and the second time was in Beijing in 2014. Given China's extensive experience in organizing or holding this kind of large international events, I'm not particularly worried about its ability to manage the logistics. However, there are concerns in Taiwan indeed, because everyone knows that China does not recognize Taiwan's severity. Compared with 10 or 20 years ago, China's political environment has become way more tighter and more authoritarian these years, especially after President Xi comes up and has become his new term. That's why the Taiwanese government is worried that officials, businessmen, and representatives or any journalists, Taiwanese journalists traveling to China for APEC might face difficulties or even have potential risk to their personal safety. Another point worth noting is that in this APEC meeting, even South Korea has been one of the victims of United States tariff. Both President Trump and President Xi were able to meet in Gyeongju, meet smoothly and reach an agreement eventually. But when APEC is hosted by China next year, the question will be whether Beijing can truly act as a mediator or arbiter, helping world leaders reaching consensus, or whether it will still instead use the occasion to showcase its own power. That's something we will need to watch closely.
Right, we'll have to watch for that. That will be taking place, of course, next year. Chien-Hao, thank you so much for making time to join us live and with your busy schedule there in Gyeongju.
Thank you.
And Celio, thank you very much for joining us from our APEC outdoor studio there in Gyeongju.
Thank you.
All right, on that note, we end Press Perspective for today. Thank you for watching.